What's up, my family? Listen, first-time listener, or you've been here the whole damn time. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, giddy up, let's go, no notes.
That's my baby. That's my baby.
We're going at it at 110%.
I just want 5 minutes of happiness, please. Just give me 5 minutes.
And they scored! They did it!
What the hell was that? Oh, yeah!
What the f*** are you talking about?
Oh, yeah, friends. It is Tuesday. It is 4 o'clock. You know what that means. That means it's time for the Rob Ellis Show here on A2D Radio across all the platforms. Love to be hanging out with you as always. Man, I was sitting there last night thinking about the show, right? And I'm thinking about, I'm going to be coming on tomorrow, and the Eagles are going to be 5-0. And the Phillies are going to be up 2-0 going back to Philadelphia on Wednesday, about to close out the Braves. How sweet it is, man. How great are these times in Philadelphia sports? And then the last 3 innings happened last night in Atlanta, and yeah, not so much. Unfortunately, yes, that was a gut punch, friends. That was one of those where I think we all sort of dig back into like our old school Philadelphia, woe is us, only happens to us, bad losses only happen to us, or injuries, and we all start feeling sorry for ourselves. It was one of those kind of games. I mean, let's face it, Phillies are in the driver's seat. Wheeler's pitching a no-hitter. Everything is setting up the Phillies' way, and then slowly but surely, chip, and you saw it. You saw it with the Turner error. That really changed everything. Like, what happens is when you dissect a loss, right? And what you end up doing is you look back at everything that goes down, okay? And you say to yourself, I want to point a finger. It's only natural. It's human instinct to do that, right? Get into an argument with a family member. Oh, it's his fault. It's their fault. You do it with your friends, your buddies, your kids, whatever. You always want to blame somebody, right? It's easier than either just looking in the mirror or taking sort of a nuanced approach, right? So naturally, what's going on Tuesday is who's at blame. I'll tell you, it's for me, it's the players. People want to blame Rob Thompson for bringing Zach Wheeler out in the 7th inning. Your ace, your best pitcher. Yes, he made one mistake to Darno, but I have zero issue keeping him in there. Zero. I don't have a problem with Rob Thompson for the way that game 2 was managed. For the same reason why I roll with Rob Thompson the way he did things in game 1. Was it risky taking Ranger Suarez out that early? Absolutely it was. Did you need like a minor miracle for your bullpen to get you through all those innings? Yeah, and it worked. And his gut told him, keep going with my best pitcher, arguably my best player, right? And he did. And that certainly didn't necessarily work out, but there were a lot of things that happened beyond that. I think the Turner area, 2 errors, only one really cost them because that gave them a run. And what it also did, it made it 4-1, but it also gave Atlanta life. And that to me was a really big play in this thing. Obviously, Hoffman makes a mistake, which is a killer, right? And you're throwing him into high leverage situation. He's had a heck of a year, but this is a guy who doesn't have a lot of that kind of experience, and you're trusting him. So that hurt for sure. But you throw him into a high leverage spot in game 1. You've thrown him into high leverage spots down the stretch when you needed wins. So I can't really fault decision-making necessarily as I can player execution. Hoffman's got to make a better pitch. Wheeler can't make a mistake to Travis d'Arnaud. And Bryce Harper, who we love for the uber aggressiveness all the time, made a mistake on the base pass. Look, and the other part of it is, sometimes, as hard as this part is to admit or do, sometimes you say, you know what? That dude made a sick play, made an insane play on that fly ball. He did. Michael Harris made a great play. He made a great play earlier. This was even greater to close out the game, but he made a great play. And Harper made a mistake. You know what Harper's thought process is? I'm on first base. That thing kicks off the wall. Man, I am trying to score. I am hell-bent on scoring there and tying this thing. That's what he's thinking. Should he have gotten past second base? Absolutely not. No, therein lies the mistake. Therein lies the player error. But that's what his mindset was. And on top of it, you need Riley to make a brilliant play, sort of backing up what was not a great throw back into the infield. Scoop, throw, right on the money, out. That's how you win or lose playoff games. It's like inches, man. It's like centimeters sometimes. And that's what ended up happening. And the Phillies lost, and it was a gut punch. And it was one of those games where you felt like they absolutely had it, and they just snatched it away. And look, again, like the tough part of it is, if you win that game, you're going back to Philly into what's going to be a cauldron of insanity. I mean, that's exactly what it's going to be at Citizens Bank Park on Wednesday. It's going to be nuts. Atlanta with all that psychological baggage, right? Going into the game and really not even knowing who's going to start game 3. It had just set up so well for the Phillies, and they end up losing the game. Look, ultimately, take a step back, 1,000-foot view. They split in Atlanta, which is huge, which is ultimately what your goal is when you're the road team. Split. Okay. 2 out of 3. Hey, Mike. Mike, if you guys remember last week, I kind of hinted towards that. But anyway, Mike, I agree with you. I think the Phillies win it in 5 too. I do. I think the Phillies go into Atlanta and close this thing out. As crazy as it sounds, I think that's what ends up happening on Saturday night. But the long view, like I said, from the longer lens here, is they split there. You go back, you got to win 2. 2 are at your place of the 3 that are left, if they end up having 3 left. It's a 3-game series. You have the home field advantage now. 2 out of 3 at your place. They should take care of business. They should still win this thing. Look, Atlanta, other than Strider's got all kinds of pitching issues. They don't know what they're going to do in game 3. Bryce Elder has been torched lately. Okay. Mike, 5 is going to be Wheeler. The way this is going to play out is Nola game 3, Suarez game 4, and then Wheeler game 5. That's the way it's going to play out if we get to 5. But look, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens and how the Phillies respond, because they have responded really well all year from adversity. They are very good at sort of turning the page. I think that's where they take their lead from the manager. Rob Thompson is a very chill guy, right? And we've seen that all year. But I think they follow his lead, but they also have a lot of veterans who have been in tough spots before. And I think for all of those reasons, I think they're going to be okay. I do. I think the Phillies win this series. I still think it. I look at it from a standpoint, I believe Nola is going to pitch well tomorrow. I really do. And I think Atlanta is going to be reminded of how crazy that place is. That helps the Phillies. I think it'll also help the Phillies psychologically just put that game behind them. Like, no doubt, flying home last night from Atlanta, maybe even today, sort of licking their wounds a little bit after the way that game went down. But I think once the crowd starts to file in on Wednesday night and it starts to get loud for every single pitch and they're standing for every single pitch, then I think that game's behind them. And I think they move on. So I feel good about where the Phillies are. I know it sounds crazy coming off that game. And I'm not telling you, look, I had the same reaction everybody in the Delaware Valley had. Same freaking reaction. I'm screaming. I'm throwing stuff. I had a tough time sleeping last night. And it was one of those kind, and you wake up and you're like, damn, they lost that game? How did they lose that game? It was one of those. It's not an easy one to get over, especially as a fan. But the good thing is you got a day to sort of regroup, a day to sort of reset. And I think clearly from a Phillies standpoint, being back here is a big deal. Like if they had another game in Atlanta for some reason or whatever, it played out that way a little bit differently, I think it might be different. For the most part, they've done a pretty good job keeping Atlanta's offense at bay. Pretty good job. I think the biggest thing that the Phillies, I think they need clearly a good outing out of Nola. That's obvious. And you don't want to be tapping into the bullpen real early. So have Nola come out and look the way he's looked his last 3 starts. And they made a mechanical adjustment with him, whereas picture he's standing on the mound, okay? Picture the center field camera shot. Nola standing on the mound. To his right is a pitch clock. To his left is a pitch clock, okay? What he had been doing, and what's up, Rob? Braves pitching faltering down the stretch into the playoffs. Freed blister could be a problem. Yes, agreed, Rob. I think the blister affected him. I think the layoff affected him. I think the fact that he hadn't pitched in a long time in a meaningful game definitely affected him. The Phillies did a good job of driving up his pitch count. The biggest issue that, other than human error, other than the Phillies players, I think making some costly mistakes towards the end of the game, the biggest thing is you had the opportunity to make that like an 8-0 game early. And when you leave as many men on base as they did, and you're as poor as they were with runners in scoring position, with a team like that, you can get away with it with some lesser teams. You can let lesser teams kind of hang around and then ultimately just kind of give them the Heisman and pull away. When you're facing teams like that can hit like that, one swing of the bat, you saw it was 2 swings. 2 swings ultimately killed them. The 8 runs tomorrow, Matt, is not crazy. That is not crazy by any stretch. I'm thinking about the same thing, honestly. But the key is going to be, if you are getting to them early, pile on. We know the old adage in sports, you let a team hang around, bad things happen. The Phillies let the Braves hang around. Plain and simple. As great as Wheeler was for that time period, for up until the 7th inning when things came unglued, you let him hang around when you should be killing him. So that's the biggest takeaway I have from that game. Real quick, back to Nola here. So you have the 2 pitching clocks. Apparently, and I was talking to Scott Fransky about this, Nola had been staring at the one on essentially headed down towards where the Phillies dugout, or where the visitors dugout is, towards the third base line. He'd been staring at that a little bit too much when he was making his pitch. They corrected it, and they had him now focusing on the other pitch clock, and that's allowed him mechanically to really get on top of the ball, not open up as much, and therein has lied the success. And he's had 3 straight really good outings. I think it carries over. I do. I think he carries over, and I think he pitches well tomorrow night. Look, these teams are not, the Phillies are not intimidated by the Braves. I think there are other teams that maybe step on the field with the Braves, and it's kind of like the old Mike Tyson thing. Like, it's over when that happens. That's not the case with the Phillies against the Braves. They play them so many times. There's so much familiarity. They beat them last year in the playoffs. By the way, I mean, let's think about the dynamics of this year versus last year. Atlanta won the division. They were a 100-win team. Same thing happened this year. Phillies win game 1 in Atlanta, lose game 2 in Atlanta. Same thing happened. And then we know what happened. I don't watch much baseball, says Martian, to know how momentum works in baseball. But for me, it depends on how well the pitchers play. Nola is the biggest start of his Phillies career. Pretty astute observation. The old adage in baseball is your momentum is only as good as your next day's pitcher, right? It's exactly what it is. And with Aaron Nola on the mound versus TBD, I think it's going to end up being Bryce Elder. I like the Phillies' chances. I do. I like the Phillies' chances in that circumstance. But my point is, last year set up very similar to this year so far. Phillies went in, and they won game 3, and they won game 4, and never got back to Atlanta. Bohm is and isn't. Bohm had a big hit last night, which drove in a run, Mike. But he is, I see him pressing a little bit at the plate, just a little bit. He had a really rough game 1. I would agree with that. He was doing sort of the Castellanos thing last year where he was chasing low and away. But I think he'll be okay. I feel great about Stott in big spots. One thing I would like to see, and this is the bottom of the lineup, but I would like to see this, as good as Johan Rojas is in the field, and he's awesome in the field, I would like to see him shorten up his swing at the plate. He feels like, to me, he's trying to hit the long ball every single time. Now, look, he is the least of their worries. I'm not, but just something I would like to see. And he is phenomenal in the field. And when you have he and Pache in center and left, man, they're covering a lot of ground. That is a big time defensive outfield. And, Marsh is fine too. Marsh is in a bit of a funk swinging the bat. I'd like to see him get a little bit better, but I think they'll be all right. I think Schwarber's due. I'm feeling a Schwarber home run in game 3. Mark it down right now. Remember who said it, people. I feel good about that. We all agree. It's going to take some runs. When you're playing this Atlanta team, they're a very difficult team to just shut out or beat 3-2. They just are. I mean, sometimes you get great pitching performances, but let's face it, your bats need to show up. And, what I will be interested in seeing is Real Muto has started to hit better at home. for most of the year, he was a way better hitter on the road than home, which is strange because we know what a hitter-friendly, ballpark Citizens Bank is. But he started to hit better at home, and he had that shot last night. I think he's going to be fine. Look, I feel good about the Phillies. I do. The key is going to be Nola can't have the blow-up inning, which we know about. I mean, that's a big thing, and avoid the long ball if possible. Easier said than done against this Atlanta lineup. But these are going to be the things that they're going to have to be really mindful of, and you can't make any kind of mistakes with them. Don't open the door. Don't do it with Trey Turner. It's hard to fathom Turner. He makes the insane play in game one, which is the defensive play of the year for the Phillies, and then he has two routine plays that he can't make last night. For the life of me, man, I can't figure it out. I really can't. All right, let's come back and let's continue a little bit of the Phillies talk. I want to set you up a little bit more for game three. Then we'll get into the Eagles, Rams, and look ahead to the Jets. There's a lot to do with the Eagles, that's for sure. But we'll get a quick timeout in here. Appreciate everybody hanging with us. This is the Rob Ellis Show on A2D Radio. Right back.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen. More dartboard sets, including custom reclaimed backboards. More bar and kitchen stools that can change a room.
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
Hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
and fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colmar.
In our family, food is our daily bond. My Nonna, affectionately called Mama by many, found solace and joy in the kitchen, sharing her love through delicious creations. She turned her culinary passion into a flourishing business alongside her husband and sons in 1983. Celebrating 40 years is a testament to our exceptional team, friends, family, and beloved customers. With gratitude, we look forward to the future, expanding our brand to share the highest quality Italian food and wine nationwide. Our heartfelt thanks to everyone who has played a part in our story. Grazie mille.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio. Appreciate each and every one of you guys hanging out with us. So we are in the midst of talking some Phillies. Let me real quick. I do, Martian. I do think that they are mental lapses. I do, which is crazy. How can you have a mental lapse in an NLDS game? I don't understand it. But look, sometimes you make a mistake. It's a physical error when you boot a ball like he did earlier in the game. Trey Turner, we're talking about. The one on the relay throw was just simply not being locked in, and you hope it's not a mistake that comes back to bite this team. But you hope Trey Turner gets himself squared away up here. You really do. I wanted to throw this out there. Nakobe Dean, the Eagles have opened up the practice window for him, the 21-day practice window, which means he can start practicing, which means he can play as early as Sunday against the Jets, FYI. But real quick, just to put a bow on the Phillies here. I do believe in this team. One of the things Rob Thompson said when the Phillies clinched during the regular season was this team is built for the postseason. And I agree with that. I think they are red light players for the most part on this team, like guys who thrive in the moment, step up in the moment, et cetera. And they had a couple of moments late in the season, if you remember, when the bullpen started to struggle, where the offense would bring them back. Bryce Harper would hit a monster home run to either tie the game or give the Phillies a lead. And unfortunately, a couple times the bullpen gave it up. Generally, the next day, the next game that the team played, there wasn't any kind of hangover effect. They would bounce back. They would generally get a win. They would generally play well. I know the stakes are a little bit higher. This is the playoffs. It's not the regular season, but I expect to see the same thing. I do. I expect this team to bounce back. I still think they win the series. It's setting up to be the Phillies and the Diamondbacks, which actually is really good. If I'm getting way ahead of myself, I know. But if that's the case, the Phillies have home field advantage for what it's worth. Just a thought, because I think the Dodgers are in big, big trouble. Their pitching is injured, banged up, and they're a mess right now. And that's going back to Arizona, with Arizona up 2-0. But certainly tomorrow is going to be fun in South Philadelphia. I'll be down there. Looking forward to that game. And I think the Phillies will handle their business. I'll circle back. I'll tell you exactly how I think the game plays out in a little bit, but let's talk some birds here. encouraging win, even though they didn't necessarily run away with it. They still won pretty handily, 9 points on the road. But what you saw was, for the second straight week, the passing game clicking. You also saw the incorporation of Dallas Goedert. You saw A.J. Brown dominate for yet, another game. And he's been phenomenal, with the exception of the one game where he didn't get a lot of action. He's been phenomenal all year. You saw a team that made adjustments. You think about it, the early going of that game looked like it was going to be a back and forth shootout. And to the Eagles' credit, I think that the end of the game was really, really big. They got the momentum swing when they scored late in the half. They got a couple penalties that aided that. They were real penalties, but it aided that. And then they punched it in with the tush push. And the Eagles scored at the end of the half and really didn't look back. No points allowed by the defense in the second half. The offense did what it had to do. And I think they've shown you now through 5 games that they can win a lot of different ways. They can win running it on you, stopping the run, passing it on you. Jalen last game really started to get his legs going too. He looked to me as comfortable as he's looked all year, whether it was rhythm in the passing game, whether it was the called draws, scrambles, so those sort of back-breaking, demoralizing scrambles where you need 3 yards and he gets 4 or 5. Those kind of things, man, play mind games and wreak havoc on a defense. And that's what I take away from games like that. Like, they're getting there. They're not all the way there. The pass defense still isn't good enough, but they're getting there. I'll tell you what was interesting, though. Part of the adjustments that the Eagles made, they plugged Bradley Roby in there. And when they plugged him in, he did a pretty good job. He did. He more than held his own, and that's encouraging. It really is. For a guy who wasn't necessarily maybe in football shape, you got to like what you're seeing. And Desai really did a good job. I don't know, Marcia, does Desai catch a lot of flack? I think people are in wait and see mode with him. That's how I'd probably describe it. I thought Gannon caught a lot of flack. I think Desai's in wait and see mode, but this was a really good Sean Desai game. That he doesn't have all the troops necessarily in the secondary, but he made some adjustments on the back end. And to be able to contain Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell and Stafford and that crew, you're doing something right. Now, they were aided by the pass rush. Make no mistake. What you're seeing as games go on and we start to get into the fourth quarter and other team, the opposition gets tired, that's when you really see Hassan Reddick shine and thrive. And he ends up getting 2 sacks. He's got 3 in his last 2 games. Jalen Carter, who's been a monster all year. A couple things with Carter. Let's remove the rookie label. He's one of the best defensive tackles in football. There's no rookie needed. He is one of the best defensive tackles in football, period. What he's doing, if you do want to look at him in comparison to the other rookies, he's either 1, 2, or 3 in virtually every category. But the impact that he's had, the ability to hit the ground running right away in both the pass game and the run game is remarkable. We could, at the end of the season, if he stays healthy, be saying he was the best rookie in the draft, which is crazy to say when you think about all the quarterbacks that were taken ahead of him and some of the others, but he's just been absolutely awesome. And here is, and Sydney family says 7:20 a.m. Nice Wednesday morning here, waiting for the Jets to get smothered. Okay. I don't get the 7:20 part, but I got you. I think that when you look at the way this game sets up against the Jets, so there's a couple things. One, the Jets have a good defense. They do. They have a good defense, defensive line, linebackers, secondary. There's a lot of talent there on this Jets team. The tough part of it for them, for the most part this year, and they got a win last week against Denver, which, by the way, I don't care about the Jets, but I was glad to see it. With all the talking that Sean Payton has done, I was really glad to see him get it stuck to him. I could argue Carter is an upgrade from Hargrave. Could absolutely argue that, Jake. No question. He is superior in the run game. And at this rate, if he keeps up this pace with the sacks, what's he got? 3.5 through 5? he's going to have a monster sack total too. What's up, Charles? Good to see you, brother. Good to see Jake as well. And everybody who's been hanging out with us, Jonathan and Mike and Sydney family and Marsh. And I appreciate all you guys. But really, I mean, if you look at it, oh, I gotcha. Sydney family. Yes, it's 7:20 a.m. there. I gotcha. My bad. I'm thinking Sydney as a name, not as Sydney, Australia. I'm a little slow on the uptake, Sydney. That one's on me. I got to do a better job. But no, I think that while the defense is really good, the problem with the Jets is it's a lot of 3 and outs. It's turnovers. It's putting the defense in tough positions in short fields for the opposition. That's why maybe their numbers aren't, blowing you away necessarily when you look at them. But I think the key to this Eagles game is the Eagles defensive line against the Jets offensive line that isn't really good and is banged up. If you didn't hear, and this was, if you're an Eagles fan, look, you never root for an injury or anything like that. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but when you have injuries, you take advantage of it. So Elijah Vern Tucker, who is the Jets starting right tackle, tore his Achilles. He's done for the season. So that you're talking about an offensive line that already wasn't great behind a quarterback who's, let's face it, trying to just at least be competent. I see no reason why Reddick and Sweat and Brandon Graham and the guys on the interior can't get loose here. I think what's going to happen is they're going to get to Zach Wilson. They're going to sack him. They're going to force him into mistakes. He is prone to turnovers. I think all those things are going to happen. Look, the Jets have, back to what I was saying about the Jets, they've shown some heart here. They didn't just lay down after Aaron Rodgers got hurt. And I give them credit for that. There's something to be said for that. And last week had to be pretty sweet for them, beating Denver in Denver with all the talking that Sean Payton did. I think that had to be nice for Nathaniel Hackett. He got the game ball. They made him a team captain, and they stuck it, where for Sean Payton. So that part was cool. But ultimately, I don't buy this offense. I don't buy it with Wilson. I think they have a good running game. Breece Hall's really good. They haven't really figured out Dalvin Cook yet. And Garrett Wilson is a dangerous receiver, man. But unless he has the right guy throwing him the ball, it won't make much difference. I think the Eagles will be able I'll tell you something I'm fearful a little bit. And City was happy with the adjustments. And yes, the Jets O-line, very unsteady. One thing I worry about slightly. Now, the one thing I can say about the Eagles under Nick Sirianni is they're always prepared. They really are. I feel like, the losses they've had haven't been from being unprepared. And you look around the NFL week in and week out, and you see a lot of teams that sort of just think they can show up or aren't quite prepared properly by the coaching staff. That's not the Eagles. Okay. And Mike, Ralph, we can pull Michael's comment up there. We can jump back and forth between the Phillies and the Eagles. It's not a problem. Michael, I agree with you. Tough loss last night. Can't squander a start like that. No question about it. No question about it. I agree. It was a painful loss. My only point is, we are going to find out what Nola's really made of. I agree with you. Potentially he pitches poorly. It could be his last start in a Phillies uniform. That's not out of the question. I think, and I was talking about this earlier, if you guys are just hopping on, while it was a big time gut punch kind of loss, I believe that this team has the ability to bounce back. They've shown you that kind of fortitude all year. And I think we're going to see it again. I really do. But real quick, back to the point that I was making with the Eagles. They're always prepared. Do worry a little bit psychologically that there may be a look ahead to the Dolphins next week. A little bit. Just something to keep in the back of your mind. I don't think it's going to be the case, but it is something that popped up when I was thinking about the game. They may look at it and say, we're playing the Jets. Like if they're playing the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, you're not looking ahead of anything. But if it's the Jets with Zach Wilson, maybe, just a thought. But I am very encouraged by the offense. I'm very encouraged by the fact that the passing game for the last 2 weeks has returned. And I guarantee you, Devontae Smith will get his. He will get his. But on top of that, you have A.J. Brown performing. Right now, he's on pace to outdo his numbers last year, which is crazy. He had really good numbers last year. Dallas Goedert now involved. I mean, that first drive was awesome for him. I think confidence-wise for Jalen to remember, you know what? This guy's pretty darn good. Let's keep feeding him later in the game. And they did. The running game hasn't been spectacular lately, but it's been solid. It's kept teams off balance. It's kept them honest. They've involved DeAndre Swift late in games, and he's been effective too. But I think it keeps them from being one-dimensional. And we know if they really want to concentrate on that part of their game, that it's there for them. They can do it. This may be a game where, oh my God, Sauce Gardner's doing a great job on the Eagles receivers. They're doing a good job on Dallas Goedert. Even though they have a really good defensive line, which Tampa did too, let's see if we can pound it down their throat. And it could be a game where the Eagles get back to running the ball. Wouldn't surprise me even a little bit. All right, more Eagles on tap when we come back. Like I said, we'll dip back into the Phillies a little bit later. I'll give you a prediction for game 3. I'll give you a prediction for the Eagles and the Jets as well. But I want to do a little bit more Birds when we come back. I will mix in some Sixers and some Flyers who, believe it or not, are starting for real this week. Yes, it gets real on Thursday with the Flyers. Thursday, Saturday, their season kicks off. So we'll dive into that as well. All right, quick timeout. We'll come right back. Continued participation from you guys in the chat and everybody hanging out with us. I appreciate it. I am Rob Ellis on A2D Radio. Rob Ellis Show, right back.
In our family, food is our daily bond. My Nonna, affectionately called Mama by many, found solace and joy in the kitchen, sharing her love through delicious creations. She turned her culinary passion into a flourishing business alongside her husband and sons in 1983. Celebrating 40 years is a testament to our exceptional team, friends, family, and beloved customers. With gratitude, we look forward to the future, expanding our brand to share the highest quality Italian food and wine nationwide. Our heartfelt thanks to everyone who has played a part in our story. Grazie mille.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen. More dartboard sets, including custom reclaimed backboards. More bar and kitchen stools that can change a room.
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
Hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
and fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colmar.
How about that? I need the hot tub and the pool table in the room. That's what I need both. We got to make that happen. A2D folks, make that happen at the Ellis compound. Welcome back in, everybody. Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio, hanging out with you. Let's pick up where we were. Pete, I agree with you. Pete Evans. I think the D-line will feast this Sunday. I think we're looking at 4 or 5 sacks. No reason to believe anything else. I think we're looking at 4 or 5 sacks. It wouldn't surprise me in the least. I just don't think Zach Wilson is that guy. And I don't think the Jets offensive line is going to be able to hold up against the Eagles pass rush. So get them in 3rd and longs, force him to make mistakes, force him to feel like he's got to, be a hero, play hero ball. And I think that's how you win. Sidney Fletcher could come back this week. That's a possibility. We'll see. They don't know exactly what's going to happen with him yet, but he could be back this week. But yeah, he got the epidural for the back, if you didn't know, last week, and they were trying to be cautious with him in that game last week against the Rams. But yeah, I think the defensive line is going to play well, and I have no reason to believe, from an offensive standpoint, that we're going to see anything different. I think they're going to be able to, be effective. This Jets team's better defensively than the Rams were last week, so it is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. The one thing that's got to be corrected offensively, and I mean, without a doubt, the red zone efficiency is unacceptable. The red zone efficiency is going to cost this team if they don't figure it out. You can get away with against the Rams. You can get away with against some of the teams they played so far. But if you don't score 7 and you're getting 3 every time you get, within the 20, you will lose games to the Niners, to the Seahawks, to the Bills, to the Dolphins, you name it. That will cost them. So that's an area that they need to get their act together and just be flat out better. All right. Flat out better, man. I'll tell you what, for sure. But there's no doubt about that. They have got to get better in that area for sure. All right. So the other thing is, you look, I don't know how, I'm sure everybody pays attention to this, but the rest of the NFC East had a tough week. Starting Thursday night, Washington gets just boat raced at home by Chicago. The Giants lose again. pretty handily, and Daniel Jones gets hurt. And then the Cowboys just get embarrassed, flat out embarrassed Sunday night by the 49ers. I mean, it was pretty sweet. We were riding real high until the loss in Atlanta last night, weren't we? But here's the thing now. Eagles have a 2-game lead on the Cowboys. And guess what? The Cowboys don't have a layup this week. They have the Chargers, who are coming off a bye on Monday night. And now all of a sudden Dak's got the visions of interceptions back in his head. He had 3 picks. They couldn't get any stops. I mean, yeah, look, there's a lot going on right now in Big D. Everybody's backing that, him up and all this other stuff. But yeah, I mean, it is amazing, man. It is amazing for sure. What's going on there. All right, Ralph, do your thing, man. If we have to do something here, I will. I get what you're putting down. I'm picking up what you're putting down, man. Anytime you need to do that, I am good. So let's do it. Let's do it, brother. Let's do it. Yeah. So, yeah, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is you look at it right now and the Eagles can separate themselves a little bit. You're seeing that with a lot of teams in the NFC, actually. If you look at it, I thought Green Bay would be a little bit more competitive than they've been, and they lost to the Raiders on Monday night. But you're seeing the Lions starting to separate themselves a little bit. I think the South's going to stay close, and I think Seattle will remain within striking distance, but it's clearly the Niners, division to be had. So maybe we are starting to see a little bit of separation. And, you can make the same case in the AFC. We just to jump over there quickly, like New England is in massive trouble. We know that, right? 1-4. And, I don't see them being able to compete with Miami or Buffalo. The North is going to be pretty tough. I think the South is going to be pretty close as well. In the West, I think it's the Chiefs and everybody else. The Chargers may sneak into the playoffs, but I think, the Chargers are kind of like the Sixers. Like, they look good on paper. They're pretty exciting and fun to watch, but ultimately when it's playoff time, nothing really special there. So that's kind of where things are, with the NFL, the NFC. I think the Eagles win this game. They're about a 7-point favorite, but I think they're able to take care of their business and win the game. I think they'll win the game and cover for those of you who like to indulge as far as that goes. But nonetheless, you got the one thing I would keep my eye on, and I like what Bradley Roby did, and maybe Bradley Roby becomes Patrick Robinson. Maybe that's what happens. But I still think, and I've been saying this to you guys for weeks now, and I will stick by it. I still think Howie's got a trick up his sleeve. I think there could be a trade coming. I think it could be a slot corner. I think maybe they add some running back depth. That's not totally out of the question. I mean, if you think about it, they're using Swift a lot. And he's had an injury history, right? To me, they're not getting super effective productivity out of Gainwell, and they don't seem to trust Penny at all. I mean, he's basically inactive, and we haven't seen much Boston Scott. So could there be a trade and Penny's the odd man out? Maybe, that could happen. I think I agree with you, Sydney. Howie not finished, just assessing. That's a good way to put it. And I think when you're through 5 weeks, the sort of quarter pole, if you will, that is when you are still in assessment mode. I mean, the great thing about what the Eagles have done is you feel like they haven't played their A game yet. You know what I mean? Like, as crazy as that sounds, you feel like they haven't played their A game yet. They're 5-0. Yeah, Jake, you make sense here. Could see another receiver. I agree with that. What has Quez Watkins done to solidify and hold on to his job? That play last week where he busts it outside when they have it blocked up for him on the receiver screen, where he easily could have gotten the first down and he takes it outside. That stuff doesn't sit well with coaches. When you call a play and it's executed by everybody but the guy the plays run for, trust me, that pisses coaches off. And Nick Sirianni was pissed off last week. And the Eagles and Nick have publicly backed Quez Watkins every single time. And as they should, not surprising. But I'm telling you, man, that stuff does not sit well. So, Jake, they very well could make a move for a receiver. But I think nickel corner is likely. Safety is likely. They're the candidates. They're the guys in the clubhouse that I would say are the ones that very much could be possibilities of this thing happening. I really do. for sure. But yeah, there's no question about that. Like, I think that could happen, and we'll see. We'll see what ends up, how it ends up playing out. As I mentioned, I think the Eagles win the game. We're about one game away, and you don't want the team or the players ever thinking like this. I can think like this as a host, but we're one game away from this thing getting really, tough. I mean, you get past the Jets, and hopefully they can, and hopefully they're 6-0, and they build up all that equity, and they're putting deposits in the bank account and all that kind of stuff. Because after that, you're home against Miami. That's Sunday night. Yeah, you go to Washington. Okay, I don't think Washington's any great shakes. Dallas, as much as they've lost 2 games and look bad on Sunday night, Dallas has had their number. So they get Dallas at home. So it's Miami and Dallas at home in 2 out of 3 weeks. Bye week at Kansas City, Buffalo home, San Fran home, at Dallas, at Seattle. I mean, that takes you up to December. We're almost at Christmas at that point. December 17th is the Seattle game. That's all. That is a challenging piece right there, man. For sure, it is a challenging piece that we're seeing. So keep stacking right now. That's all I can tell you. Don't take this game for granted. Don't look ahead. I don't think they will, but keep stacking and keep taking care of your business. Again, a lot of good things to see, a lot of good things to extract. Not perfect, not a finished product, not peaking now, which is fine. Peak a little bit later in the year and ride that thing, right on in. So I think with this team, there's a couple things that I look at just real quick with Jalen Hurts. One, I think he and Brian Johnson are finding a groove. I don't care how long you've been with, Brian Johnson. I know Jalen Hurts and he go way back, and they were working together here. They've known each other since, from back in the day. It's different when he takes over the role as offensive coordinator and he's calling plays, because he's not just calling them for Jalen. He's calling them for the entire offense. So, you're in a situation where, it's coming at you fast and furious in games. And I think you're trying to get your bearings early. It's like any new job that you take over. And I think he and Jalen maybe weren't fully on the same page, not far off, but just a tick off. And I think you're starting to see them get closer, to the median here with one another, where they're finding themselves. And I don't know, again, like I said earlier, I don't know if Jalen early made a conscious effort not to run much or to be very cautious when running. But he looked like, at least in the last game, that he was letting loose a little bit more. He was, kind of going a little bit more full force. So I like that. I like the passing game coming back. And, a lot of people have asked me this week about some of the antics on the sidelines. Like you saw Nick getting into Jalen after the interception that he threw in the second quarter. Kelsey was very fired up about something when he was talking with Nick, and then he was talking with Jeff Stoutland. I don't worry about that. This is an emotional bunch. Nick wears his heart on his sleeve. The team sort of follows suit. I don't sweat that part of it because I think they're very much like a family, where how it is. You get into it with a family member sometimes, or a friend for that matter, and then you squash it and you move on. But because you love that person, because emotions are running high, sometimes they manifest themselves in that way. And I don't think it's any kind of big deal. Like, do we really think Jason Kelsey has an issue with anybody on the team, or anybody is going to have an issue with him? And by the way, he's crushing it again this year. Or Nick and Jalen aren't good. Jalen likes to be coached up. That's the difference between Jalen and a lot of other quarterbacks who may be prima donnas, that, guys like Carson Wentz who couldn't handle it. Jalen can handle somebody coaching him up and coaching him hard. So I don't think that's an issue, because I have had a couple people say to me, man, what's going on with the Eagles on the sidelines? It happens. It happens. So look, the difference now is that everything gets caught on camera, whereas back in the day, these kind of things used to happen all the time, and there wasn't the same kind of access. So I don't worry about it. I think that they're all good. They're all on the same page, and they all know. The other good thing is none of them are snowed by the 5-0 start. What I mean by that is they understand that there are areas of improvement that have to take place, and they're not all the way there. That's good, because that just keeps you going. That keeps you motivated. It keeps you driving. And Kelsey expects more. Yeah, he does. He does know what's coming. These guys, Kelsey and Lane, and then go to the other side of the ball, BG and Fletcher Cox, they've been through the battles, man. They know what it takes to keep climbing. And that was one of the great things about some of the younger guys getting a taste last year. But these guys know. They know it's going to take a game, not, A minus, B plus. Like, you got to be on your P's and Q's. And I think that's what they're striving for right now. And these are the things that they're ironing out right now, is to get that part corrected when they hit the stretch run. All right, we come back. We'll kind of hop around a little bit. I want to talk some Sixers. I want to talk some Flyers. We'll circle it back to the Phillies as well as we roll into our fourth and final segment. Don't go anywhere. You're hanging with me. I am Rob Ellis. This is the Rob Ellis Show on A2D Radio. Right back.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen. More dartboard sets, including custom reclaimed backboards. More bar and kitchen stools that can change a room.
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
Hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
and fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colmar.
Hats.com is the premier destination for quality and fashion-forward hats and more, with designs for every style and trend. Locally based and run by Philly sports team fanatics, Hats.com can help you elevate your hat John. Utilize the easy-to-use guides at Hats.com to find your perfect size and style, and shipping and returns are free. Hats.com. Find yourself in a hat. Use code Philly for 15% off your order. Hats.com.
Damn, Hollis and Irving looking good, man, with those lids. Very nice. Hats.com. Love it. Welcome back in, everybody. Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio, as we roll into the final segment of the program. And again, I appreciate each and every one of you guys hanging out. All right, I'll gauge you guys in the chat here, and you tell me how you feel. Sixers are right around the corner. They're in their preseason right now, preseason games, but they're right around the corner. And they're going to start playing for real pretty soon. If I asked you on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being super excited, 1 being not excited at all, what number would you put on the Sixers season starting and your excitement level? Like, for me, 3, 4. I love the Sixers. I love the NBA. But I'm frustrated with this team is the best way to put it. I am frustrated with this team. I'm frustrated with the way a lot of things have gone. A lot of the moves that have been made, the whole Harden thing, the inability to be players for some of these guys who were out there, Drew Holiday, et cetera. You just didn't have what it took to be able to make a move. And that part bothers me. As a Sixers fan. And it just feels like they haven't done enough to put themselves in a position to win the NBA Eastern Conference, to even get past the second round. I mean, you still look at it, it's Boston, it's Milwaukee. Until proven otherwise, I don't write Miami off, even though they lost some talent. And the Knicks and the Cavaliers, man, are interesting. They're interesting. They're climbing. I don't feel like the Sixers are climbing. Feel like they're just sort of flatlining here. But it is the least excited I've been in a while for a Sixers season. It really is. And I think, I see what Martian has to say. Love the Sixers, but I need some time off from them. I got you, Jake. I've been done with the Sixers since Ben Simmons passed up on the dunk against the Hawks. Yeah. I think that was sort of the beginning of the end in a lot of ways. But yeah, I feel both of you guys on that. I just curious to gauge people because we're going to go through the preseason and, it's going to be all the pretense with James Harden. He's probably not going to play in these games. And then he'll start playing in the regular season and moping around. And it's just like, am I really up for this? I think, what ultimately happens is once we get through the Phillies playoffs, and hopefully that lasts all the way through the World Series into November, because the Eagles only play once a week, I think then, the focus shifts into the Sixers and the Flyers. And that brings me to the Flyers now. Flyers, they start Thursday. They play Thursday and Saturday this week. As weird as this sounds, I'm not going to say I'm more interested in the Flyers than the Sixers, but I have more interest in the Flyers this year than I've had maybe the last 3 or 4 years. I'm curious what this is going to look like under this regime with Keith Jones and Daniel Briere. I'm curious what it's going to look like, because they finally realized they had to tear it down to the stud to build it back up, and not just sort of, do some of these things, make moves here and there, Band-Aid kind of moves. They realize that they can't do that. And that part encourages me and gives me some hope here. It's been a while. Let's face it. I mean, you look at it, Carter Hart certainly, I think, is a worthy goaltender for sure. But most of what else we're going to be seeing is not everybody. I mean, Couturier is coming back, and you still have Konechny and some of the others, but it's going to be a lot of younger guys figuring out. And what you do in the process as a fan or as an analyst, whatever, is you look at how they're going to weed this thing out. Who's going to be a part of this thing for the future? Who isn't? Who can play? Who can't? Who is trade bait? And I think there are going to be some moves made during the season for sure, because the Flyers are not going to be in a position to be in the playoffs. But, they're going to move them. This is not a tank. Like, you're not going to have players out there not giving their all. You are. You're just going to be limited talent-wise. And the other thing I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on is how much is this going to wear on John Tortorella? He came here knowing, what the situation was, kind of a rebuild. It's new regime, but this regime is behind him. So it's not like he's just some inherited coach that they're going to run out. They're not looking to do that. But I just wonder if at this juncture in his career, he's going to be able to handle some of the mistakes that come along with an inexperienced team, and how fired up he's going to get, and how angry he's going to get, and how much he's going to call guys out, how guys are going to respond to that. I mean, all those kind of things I think are interesting, but we are so, and I include myself in this, we are so Eagles and Phillies focused and centric right now that it's hard to carve out time for some of the other things, for the Flyers and the Sixers. We're just so locked in right now. All right, let me swing it back to the Phillies, but I was just curious where people were with that. Look, they built this team for the playoffs. Schwarber is a guy, and I'm just kind of walking through the lineup here. Schwarber's a guy who's had a lot of big moments in playoff games. Remember back to San Diego last year, and so the Atlanta series as well. I think Turner will respond from some of his gaffes in the field last game, and he's been effective, at the plate and on the base paths for sure. And that's another advantage the Phillies have, is their ability to steal bases and run the bases. I know this is going to sound ironic coming off of what Harper did, but run the bases aggressively. They're better than Atlanta in that aspect. I still feel good. Bohm hasn't been necessarily great, but I feel good about Bohm in big spots because he's been an RBI machine all year. Stott, he may be only in his second year, but he's like a 10-year veteran. I love what Stott's doing. You think about Castellanos. Castellanos crushes that ball last night that Michael Harris catches, and it's out of some ballparks. Other ballparks, it's hitting the fence. He happened to hit it to the wrong spot, to the wrong guy. But Castellanos is swinging a good bat. Harper for the most part, has been impactful. In game one, he's on base 4 times. So, Real Muto, as I mentioned, is hitting. I'm not worried about these guys. I think the offense will be there. This really comes down to Nola. And then after Nola's out of the game, will Rob Thompson use a guy like Jeff Hoffman in a high leverage spot? Does he trust Sir Anthony Dominguez in a big spot? Alvarado clearly has his trust. Kimbrel clearly has his trust. Others, I think it's to be determined. Like Soto is a to be determined. Hoffman, depending on the role, to be determined. I think it's still up in the air right now. But, if you can come back and get the crowd into it early in that game tomorrow, then all of a sudden Atlanta remembers what it was like last year. I truly believe that. And that starts to change the equation, and they start to get behind Nola if he's rolling. They put together a couple of runs. And the Phillies, if they can end up winning that game, it's a monumental game in the series, because I think if they lose game 3, they lose the series. But I think the Phillies, I think the winner of the series, let me put it this way. The winner of game 3 wins the series. I believe that. And I think the winner of this series wins the World Series. And I know how good Arizona's playing right now. I get it. They're playing really, really well. And I think they will knock off the Dodgers. But I think the team that wins this series wins it. Look, the Phillies can roll Wheeler and Nola, and I feel good about Suarez out there. Okay. Not a lot of other teams can do that. What's up, Brian? Good to see you, brother. Not a lot of other teams can do that, and they can throw a lot of electric arms in the back end of that bullpen, and not a lot of other teams can do that as well. The Phillies, from a lineup perspective, they're not the Braves in terms of power, in terms of, guys hitting for a high average and all that. They're not, but they're not that far off. They're really not. There's very few easy outs in the Phillies lineup, and the Braves, I don't think, are accustomed to playing lineups like that. And I said this earlier, you get past Strider, who, by the way, Strider pitched excellent in game 1. He was just a tough luck loser. Harper got him. He pitched well enough to win the game. There's no doubt about that. It's similar to the way you feel about the way it went for Wheeler last night, although he didn't get the loss. But nonetheless, when Atlanta has to deal with this kind of lineup, and they have as many question marks as they do after Strider. I mean, Fried, sitting out as long as he did, the blister, you could just tell, man, it kind of got to him last night. It really did. And then after that, you aren't even set enough to announce who your pitcher is in game 3. I mean, what does that tell you? And I don't buy the mind games thing. I mean, I'm sure they are playing a little bit of mind games, but it just tells me it's like having 2 quarterbacks. If you have 2, you don't have 1. And Brian, thank you. Yeah, I do think the winner of the series wins the World Series. But nonetheless, I think the Phillies have the advantage with starting pitching. I think bullpens are pretty comparable, and they play 2 out of 3 at their place. For all of those reasons, I think the Phillies win. I think the Phillies win this series. I think they will move on. I think that, Rob, in a chess match, 1-on-1, Phillies manager, Braves manager, take Rob Thompson over Brian Snitker anytime. So I like the Phillies' chances. I think they win. It may not be as conventional as we think. I think they win tomorrow. Game 4 might be tough. Crazy enough, as weird as it sounds, I think they go back to Atlanta and they win there in game 5. It's going to be nuts, but I think the Phillies advance. As far as the Eagles go, as I mentioned, that spread is 7-ish going to North Jersey. I think the Eagles win and cover. And at that point, we're looking at it. We're sitting back and saying, all right, 6-0, and here we go. 6-0, and here we go. Dolphins next. And hopefully this is another step for them in solidifying, just kind of buttoning things up a little bit, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Let's get everybody on the same page offensively. Let's get everybody on the same page defensively. Surprise this year, pleasant surprise. How about the Eagles special teams? Britton Covey has been one of the best returners in the game, in the punt return game. Jake Elliott, we know, is a beast. Braden Mann's done okay since taking over Siposs. But I think the other thing is the coverage units have done a nice job, kickoff and punt. So props to Michael Clay, where the special teams have improved for sure. But you want to button that thing up. You want to continue to get Jalen Hurts and Brian Johnson on the same page. You certainly, and Nick too, for that matter. And I think very encouraging sign what we saw from Sean Desai last week. Made adjustments, did some things on the fly, halftime. That's good. And they blitzed, I think, 30% of the time. So they were a little bit more aggressive. He's putting his own unique twists on these things. And I think we also, have to understand that this is his, first year as the defensive coordinator here with new personnel. He has been a defensive coordinator in the past, we know, in Chicago and whatnot. But I think for him, kind of getting on that page, it's going to be pretty wild. The city would lose its mind if we enter the bye undefeated. Jake, I agree. The city would lose their mind if the Eagles entered the bye undefeated. The only problem would be getting through that week, right? How could we handle a week without an Eagles game if they're rolling like that? But that's a good problem. That this is the category of good problems to have, and hopefully that's going to be the case. All right. I hope I'm sitting here next week talking to you about the NLCS with the Phillies in it. I hope so. I hope the Eagles continue to keep it rolling and move to 6-0. The Flyers 2-0. No, am I asking too much? Probably. But Flyers get started. Sixers aren't that far away. It's a fun time in Philadelphia sports. Enjoy it. Soak it up, man, because, we've been through enough lean times and lean years that you deserve it. We deserve it. So let's have some fun with it. And, it is sports. So that is a good thing. So let's have some fun with it. Want to thank my man, Ralph Dell, producing the program. And thanks to Tom Arnone for running the shop here at A2D Radio. Each and every one of you guys in the chat section, you guys are the best. Everybody streaming, everybody listening. I am always appreciative of you guys hanging out with me and spending some time with me. And we'll do it again next week, same time, 4:00 next Tuesday. I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I am Rob Ellis, Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio. See you guys next week. Tell a friend, subscribe.